Emanuel Ness, the chair of your political science department, said he supports, quote, resistance by any means necessary, which includes violence. How can you say those statements that you support your Jewish students? Shut up and get out of here.
Gentleman will suspend. Gentleman will suspend.
Get out of here, you loser. Come on. By the way, to be clear, I hold you all responsible for this. It is the attitude that you have allowed on your college campuses that make people think that this is okay. That is why this happens, because you have someone like Emanuel Ness that says resistance by any means necessary, and I assume this person still works at your school. Is that correct?
Microphone, please.
Any call for violence against Jewish members of our community is entirely unacceptable.
So why does this person still work there?
Any individual or faculty that has a complaint of breaking our rules, we will investigate them and take the appropriate disciplinary action if warranted.
Corinna Mullen at John Jay College said, after October 7th, the right of Palestinian armed resistance is just, and just last month was filmed chanting, up, up, up with freedom, down, down, down with Zionist scum. This is a professor that teaches your Jewish students. How can you say you have an unwavering zero tolerance policy when this person teaches at your school?
And I believe that that faculty member is no longer teaching with the university. Any call for violence, any call for supporting Hamas or terrorism is entirely unacceptable, and we made those statements several times.
It seems that the majority on this committee is eager to continue enabling this administration's repressive agenda. President Trump's attack on civil liberties and academic freedom are well documented. While Republicans continue their charade, new information about the Trump administration's policy of ideological deportations is coming to light. Last week, a senior ICE official testified in court that the agency is using the website Canary Mission to target students for deportation. Canary Mission is an anonymous site that blacklists and doxes individuals, charging them with antisemitism through little evidence or zero due process. It has long been criticized for its McCarthyism tactics that surveil students, repress speech, and instill a culture of fear across campuses. This is a site that reframes attending an anti-war protest as supporting pro-Hamas rally. It is not known who runs this site, but the agenda is clear: pro-Palestinian advocacy cannot be tolerated. And now this ideological agenda has a direct line to state power. Let's recall the high-profile case of student Romeza Ozturk, who was illegally detained by ICE and held for 6 weeks after writing an op-ed in support of Palestine. Curiously, that op-ed was published entirely a year before ICE chose to target her. But right before her abduction, Canary Mission posted a profile of her on its website accusing her of anti-Israel activism for writing the article. The same profile that ICE has now admitted to using in their internal memo. In a matter of weeks, she was picked up and her student status was terminated. Canary Mission loudly claimed credit for her detention, and it seems that credit was earned. This shameless authoritarian display of weaponizing a blacklist to crack down on political speech and detain academics is a page directly out of the McCarthy playbook. President Cropes, Chancellor Rodriguez, and Chancellor Lyon, this question is for the three of you. In the light of these escalations, with students facing detention, deportation in retaliation for their clearly protected speech, how are your campuses protecting students who are exercising their First Amendment rights?
We have free speech policies that are crystal clear, and in fact, we've clarified them over time to permit speech. We don't permit any violence with regard to the promotion of any particular viewpoint, and we try to act on violations of those policies quickly and fairly.
Thank you, Chancellor Rodriguez.
We make sure that all students are informed about our policies. We want students and all the members of our community to exercise the right to free speech, but they have to do it abiding by our rules and regulations. We're also investing, as I indicated earlier, in this constructive dialogue initiative. We want individuals to have the tools to have difficult conversations, to be able to have them, but to do them in a way that is respectful and civilized. And the best way also to empower the students is to provide them with information.
Mm-hmm. Chancellor Lyons?
We are supporting with education and training over 30 anti-bias initiatives to make sure that students can see into these issues more deeply. New curriculum, like what I mentioned earlier, a course like openness to opposing views, sharpening where the no tolerance lines are, which was very, very helpful, I believe, for the students to feel like they could safely express their free speech rights. And
at what stage, to the three of you, again, will you intervene when students are being doxxed? We've seen fans in front of your campuses with students being doxxed.
Well, at Berkeley, the question there is if a doxing or other discrimination or harassment event would be reported, and we would follow it up with an investigation and make a decision.
And we have a webpage that we indicate to members of the community as a resource for the different things that can be done if someone is a subject of doxing.
Reports of doxing are acted on quite quickly and investigated.
Appreciate that. Thank you, and I yield back.
You know, I think it's really interesting. One of my colleagues from Florida just brought up a terrible mass shooting that happened at Florida State University, which is horrible, and this is part of the reason I ran for Congress, is to end gun violence.
My colleague on the other side talked about the nature of things being deadly, and I'd like to talk about that. On April 17th, less than 1 month ago at 11:56 in the morning, a shooter carrying a gun walked onto the campus at Florida State University and began to shoot students and adults. A gun crime that we would all agree was horrific. Now, I'm new in this place. I only got elected here a month ago. And what I will tell you of my observation of my first 4 weeks being in here is I hear a lot of canned speeches that don't actually address the bills and the issues that the American people have sent us here to work on. And I think it's why we may be held to some degree in such low regard. But on this shooting at 11:56 on April 17th, 7 people were shot. 5, fortunately, were not killed. We only know one of them. She was a graduate student. The other names have not been released. But in that shooting, 2 were killed. Roberto Morales was 57 years old, a dining coordinator at Florida State. Tiru Chaba was a vice president at the food service company at Florida State. Now, why do I tell this story? Law enforcement at Florida State did everything right. They rushed to the scene. They subdued the shooter. And you know how long it took them to do that? It took them 4 minutes, the amount of time that I will speak here today. In those 4 minutes, with law enforcement doing everything, 7 people were shot, 2 were killed. Now, H.R. 2243 would say that if any one of them was a retired or an off-duty law enforcement officer, they could have protected themselves. Because the fact of the matter is, when these horrific things happen, it will take law enforcement time to get there. And the only way for you to defend yourself is for you to do it.
But he brought up this shooting. I thought it was interesting because he left out one of the most important parts. He brought up that he never wants to see one of these shootings happen again, but he left out how the shooter got his gun. And the shooter got his gun from his stepmother, and it was a retired service weapon that was not kept in a safe way. He stole the gun, retired service weapon, from his mother, and then he went to Florida State University and murdered 2 people and wounded 6 others. And I bet you that that same gentleman who talked about that shooting is going to vote yes later on H.R. 2255, which I deeply oppose. Just a month later, after this former service weapon was used to carry out a mass shooting and kill people at Florida State University, Republicans here in Congress are pushing the Federal Law Enforcement Service Weapon Purchase Act, which would flood the gun market with even more former service weapons without any additional precautions. Zero safe storage, zero background checks. In every state, a police officer would be able to purchase an older gun from their department at a discounted price. House Republicans would not even consider my amendment to encourage caution by letting people hold law enforcement agencies accountable with what's done with the weapon. The United States already has the highest number of mass shootings in the world, and gun violence is the leading cause of death for children in this country. So I'm glad that one of my Republican colleagues from Florida wants to make sure that these shootings don't happen again. Let's start by ensuring that we block this bill, H.R. 2255, so that way the police officers don't even have to respond to a mass shooting in the first place. I'm done with talking about how we're going to handle these things after they happen. Let's talk about how we're going to prevent these shootings from happening in the first place. Thank you, and I yield back.
Like others, I've expressed my concern that despite 9 hearings on anti-Semitism since I've joined Congress, that we've yet to have a single hearing on any of the other very pervasive forms of hatred that's rising in our country right now. Anti-Blackness, of course, which remains foundational, anti-Muslim hate, which is approaching levels unseen since 9/11. We can't pretend that these are not pressing when a member of this committee who is Black and Muslim is being called a terrorist by another member of this committee. Still, I was encouraged that today's hearing was planning to focus on the underlying causes of anti-Semitism and hate, something the previous 8 have, quite frankly, failed to do in earnest, because we do need to address the underlying factors if college students and any of us ever hope to live in a peaceful and a safe society. Instead, it was made immediately clear, unsurprisingly, that this is yet another hearing to demonize Muslims and their religion, to demonize Palestinians, including those in Gaza who have undeniably faced unspeakable harms, a humanitarian crisis, and human rights crisis, and particularly the young students, activists, and faculty who are determined to stand up against human rights violations. This is predictably another public opportunity for Republicans to pit Jewish Americans against Muslim Americans, Muslim against Christian, Black against white, to reinforce the actual underlying factors of hate, which are real systemic harms of white supremacy, and its reinforcement at its highest levels of government. One glaring example is the administration's selective misinterpretation of the weaponization of the civil rights laws. Mr. Nosenchuk, in your testimony, you discussed how the Trump administration is imposing draconian penalties that are completely divorced from supporting Jewish students or addressing anti-Semitism. Briefly, how is this administration's assessment of civil rights violations undermining meaningful oversight of campus safety efforts that would support students?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. As I said in my testimony, there is a proven way to address civil rights violations. Congress, this body, charged the Office of Civil Rights with enforcing Title VI of the Civil Rights Act and ensuring that all students have an opportunity to access their education free from discrimination. So when we would conduct an investigation and reach a resolution agreement, it would result in a whole series of steps, that many of which my fellow panelists here have discussed, to address the anti-Semitism that has occurred and to change the campus climate so that anti-Semitism doesn't exist. In addition, when investigations are conducted, it's not like there's only one type of discrimination that's occurring. Often, when an investigation is conducted and there's evidence of, say, anti-Black discrimination, we might also have found evidence of anti-Semitic discrimination and expanded the investigation to encompass that. We had that flexibility. Imposing a $900 million penalty on a university is not going to prompt university presidents sitting here to think about how they're going to address anti-Semitism. They're going to think about how are they going to fill this huge hole in their budget that's just been created by a penalty that has nothing to do with the discriminatory conduct that has actually occurred.
Thank you. And I don't want to also be clear, that we don't allow ourselves to be lost in rhetoric. This administration's attack on colleges isn't just about campus safety. I argue it's not about it at all. It's about suppressing education. The point of college, we've talked about, is for students to expand their worldviews, develop critical thinking skills, make them less susceptible to disinformation, and navigate how to stand up for what's right and important to them. against things that they disagree with, which might include authoritarianism. That's why this administration is doing everything and beyond in its power to dismantle higher education, censor dissent, freezing funding, forcing university presidents to resign, threatening to remove accreditation, banning entire offices and departments and revoking students' visas, disappearing students, eroding student loan programs, gutting civil rights resources, and of course, as it was mentioned at the outset of this hearing, putting an end to diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility, the boogeyman of MAGA Republicans who are determined to sow hate and division instead of equity and inclusion. But at the same time as their crusade against diversity, the Trump administration and Republicans have said that colleges must hire more conservative faculty to increase viewpoint diversity on campuses while calling for disciplinary action against professors who believe they disagree with. Really very quickly, Mr. Nosenchuk, do you think it's appropriate for colleges to make hiring disciplinary decisions based on pressure from whatever party happens to be in Congress or in charge? Just a yes or no?
No.
Thank you. These attacks on colleges are not solving the real problem. So make mistakes. This is yet another opportunity to exploit legitimate concerns of anti-Semitism on college campuses to further their attacks on the institutions of learning. I think that it's incredibly clear hearing the opening testimonies and statements and the testimony that we will continue to hear throughout the day. I hope that you will consider that. Thank you, and I yield back.